Hi, I'm Andre Bajaria. I'm a motorcycle rider, traveller and guide based in the Peak District National Park in the north of England. You can find my motorcycle and motorcycle-based travel videos on the YouTube channel Peak Motorcycles.
Welcome to the Real Riders Podcast. My name's Simon Josie, and if this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for listening. As you heard, my guest today is Andre Bajaria. And I think it's fair to say that Andre is a true motorcycling enthusiast, with that unique flavour of enthusiasm that comes to people who discover something a little later in life. Our conversation was wide-ranging, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed speaking with Andre. As always, if you have the time and inclination, please consider rating or liking the Real Riders Podcast in your favourite podcast app or on YouTube. This will help other listeners find the podcast. Righto, let's get to my talk with Andre. Welcome to the podcast, Andre, and thanks for being my guest. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, look, it's my pleasure entirely. I know you've been in the Himalayas recently, and you're not long back from that trip. So perhaps we could start with your work as a motorcycle tour guide. How did that start?
I think I probably need to go back to the trip I did to the Himalayas 10 years ago, because that was really what got me into motorcycling in the first place. I'm not that young, unfortunately, and I'd never really ridden motorcycles in my youth. And it was a chance encounter while on holiday with my parents in South India in 2012, where I met a group who were traveling from Chennai to Goa through the hills in southern India on motorcycles. And at the time, I thought that sounds like a fun thing to do. I'll do that. By the time I'd been to Mysore and Bangalore and seen the traffic and decided that that would be a surefire way to end up under a bus, I forgot about it. And 3 months later, saw a documentary about the Leh Manali Highway in the Himalayas. There wasn't a lot of traffic to squash me, so I thought I would have a go at that instead. Found a company, called them up, asked if I could do their tour. They said, yes, of course. What bike do you ride? And I said, actually, I've never even been on a motorcycle. So there was a sigh, and then they said, well, get your license and call us back. So that was my summer of 2012. I called them back. They said, great, but the roads are covered with snow. You can't come now anyway. But honestly, we wouldn't take you if you just passed your test. You know, get some experience in. So I spent most of 2013 riding around Europe, including trips to the Alps. I did a lap of the Baltic, went up to Scotland, went to the Ardennes and Belgium and Luxembourg. Got my miles in, called them at the end of the summer, and they said, right, I'm ready. And they said, well, it's covered with snow again, but you can come in 2014. So my original intention was to just go and do that tour. And then that was it. I was done. That was the reason I learned to ride a motorbike. Unfortunately, I sort of got the bug. And here I am, 12 years on, still riding. In 2018, I had some visitors staying in a holiday cottage I have here in the Peak District. And when they ran out of firewood, went to the garage to get them some more, and they noticed I had a few motorcycles in there. It turns out it was the owner, Felix, of Magellan Motorcycle Tours. And I think at the time he thought maybe I'd be a customer, so mentioned he had this company and that they did tours if I fancied it. I had a look at the website, realised that a lot of the places they went were places I'd already been, and it said they were looking for guides. So I thought I'd give that a go. So since then, I think I've done 7 different tours with Magellan Motorcycle Tours, and I've also started running my own tours to Colombia in South America.
To me, it's a big step from being a rider to being a guide. What life experiences gave you the confidence to give guiding a go?
After I did that first trip to the Himalayas, I very much got the bug. I was living in London at the time. I had a mortgage, I had a day job, I had all sorts of commitments. And though I would love to do one of these long trips where you can just take off with no responsibilities and just travel, that was just not realistic for me. So I ended up doing lots of other smaller trips. So I went to Bolivia and spent a couple of weeks riding down to the Atacama and on the Altiplano and the Salt Flats. I'd done trips to the US. I'd done several other trips around Europe. And I just really got the bug for it. I was the organizer for my group of friends. So I had other friends who rode, and yeah, they all contributed in one way or another towards the trips. But a lot of the organization seemed to fall to me. And, managing problems, dealing with things that came up on a motorcycle trip was something that I got used to. As my original training, I'm an electrical engineer, and my first job was working in the oil and gas business as a navigation engineer, working on oil rigs and boats. And I know it's not the same as motorbike guiding, but problems come up. It's not your day-to-day things. Every day there's something new to deal with. And I suppose it didn't seem like that much of a leap for me to go from that to motorcycle guiding.
Is it fair for me to ask, does the guiding serve to feed a motorcycle touring addiction, or does the guiding serve to feed a motorcycling addiction? So is it the touring or the motorcycling? Which of those addictions potentially has been fed by the guiding?
So for me, the guiding, there's a couple of things with it. So on the one hand, if it's a trip that I've never done before, and some of them are, it's an opportunity to go and travel to these places almost as an excuse is the wrong word, but for my day job, there's a certain amount of rigor and commitment to it. But if I know ahead of time that I have these trips coming up, my clients are generally accepting of me disappearing. And by having these tours available and suggested that I can go and do, it's definitely an opportunity to do that. Sometimes the tours are just things that I would really like to do, and it's convenience not exactly the right word, because there is a responsibility when you do it. So you don't really have the opportunities to do what you really want to do. So last year I went to Morocco. So I rode from the UK, in the UK down to Plymouth, took the boat to Spain. It's 3 days across Spain and then the ferry to Morocco. And it was a fabulous trip. I loved it. I had a really nice group of guests. Everyone got on. But as I was riding through the desert and I saw these dirt roads and I saw people disappearing on adventure bikes, the temptation was, if I was there on my own, I could probably, go to some more places, probably get myself into some more trouble. But you can't do that when you have a group that you're responsible for and they're all road riders. Nevertheless, it was great to ride down almost to the border with Algeria. And to think that, from the Peak District, a motorcycle has taken me to a new continent, across two large bodies of water. And it's the travel element of it. There's the way that you see the world on a motorcycle is very different to how you see it sightseeing, in a car or in a bus. And that element of it, I really love. I don't think it's really an addiction for me to do the guiding, because that probably only makes up a fairly small proportion of the work and the riding that I do. But nevertheless, it is an opportunity to go and do new things. And something I really enjoy is meeting the people. You get people from all walks of life on these trips, really like diverse backgrounds. They're a group of people who you would never put together under any other circumstances, but it's a common interest in motorcycling that has done it. And, the stories, the time in the bar when you're talking about the day, and invariably there are tales of people's past lives, things they've done, places they've been. And I really enjoy that. To be able to have a group like that is a really enjoyable way to spend a few weeks of the year. Now, I don't want to do it all the time, but in the same way as I don't want to do my day job all the time, or, anything gets boring when you do it regularly. So typically I do 1 or 2 tours a year with Magellan, and then maybe do 1 or 2 tours of my own. So this year I actually went as a guest to India to ride in the Spiti Valley with the same company I used 10 years ago. Earlier in the year, I did a trip to Romania for 3 weeks with Magellan. And then back in May, I did my first recce tour to Colombia. So I had 2 guests who came along, expressed an interest. In fact, from doing the Trail and Adventure Motorbike podcast, one of them heard that, called me up and said, yeah, that sounds like something I'd like to do. Can I come? So it's been a really fun year for that. It's not exactly over, although I think most of the long trips are done for the year. Off the back of the YouTube channel, I'm allowed to go on the press day to EICMA, the big motorcycle show that takes place in Milan every year. And I've made a bit of a thing of filming pretty hard for 2 days. Now, I know how much work that goes into making a YouTube video. And for shows, I think it's a little bit different, because by the time the show's over, interest has waned. So for these videos to be a success and for people to get something from it, I try to get everything done, edited and published by the Friday evening. So EICMA is open to the public from Thursday to Sunday. So if I can get everything done, and I typically get between 35 and 40 videos recorded, edited and published between 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning and midnight on Friday. It's a bit of a an endurance event for me. It's certainly a trial by YouTube, and by the end of it, I'm absolutely sick of video editing and publishing. However, it does mean that you get to see an awful lot. And particularly during COVID, when people couldn't travel, it really found an audience. Even now, I know there's people who will go and watch every video that I do from EICMA because they know they can't go to the show. I know other people that use it to, work out what they might go and look at when they go, or maybe when they go to Motorcycle Live or something like that.
Yeah.
I also had a lot of feedback from people in places like India and Australia who said, look, we don't get any motorcycle shows here. Not in the country, certainly not at that scale. And to be able to sit down and, just have a quick look around all the stands for a few evenings is actually quite a nice way to spend time without having to travel halfway around the world.
Yeah, look, I know that you first started going in 2021, or first started making content in 2021, and I think that year you produced 21 videos, but then the last couple of years it's sort of been 37 and 39 videos. And it's interesting what you say about the press day, because that was one of my questions I wanted to bring up, is that do you get access on the press or the trade days?
The reason why there was so few in the first year, well, half the number, is I had half the time to film. So the Tuesday is the press day where you can easily film. The stands are empty. You can pretty much get on any bike. It's when all the press conferences are. The Wednesday is a trade day. And I think, and I'm sure these numbers might be wrong now, but it used to be something like 2,000 or 3,000 people on the press day, 20 to 30,000 on the trade day. And then it's open to the public from Thursday when they get up to, I think, 150 or 200,000 people a day. So trying to film on the public days, it's impossible. You just can't. It's too noisy. There's too many people. You can't see the bikes. Even on the trade day, it gets pretty busy around the middle of the day. But they also do have rules in place. So it used to be you had to have 10,000 followers, subscribers, whatever it happened to be able to get in on the press day. And in the first year, I didn't have that. I wasn't close. I think I had maybe 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers on YouTube and maybe 3,000 or 4,000 followers on Instagram. So I put in my press accreditation application, and sure enough, it was rejected as being, a channel that hadn't done any coverage before. Now, I have a limited company for doing my other work. So after a bit of a discussion with an accountant, we changed the company description to include motorcycle video production. So I put in an application for the trade day, and that was accepted, and they let me come on the Wednesday. So the 21 videos from 2021 were based on just one day's filming.
Right.
Now, it's pretty much scales up. So when I have twice the time, I can produce twice the content. But even still, trying to record 20 videos a day. In fact, I think the split is probably 25 on the press day, 15 on the trade day. But EICMA is a big place. The Fiera Milano, where they hold it, is absolutely enormous. I think they're back up to 10 halls this year. And I think it's something like bigger than the entire NEC. So every single hall at the NEC in Birmingham, for those people that know that. So it's vast. The preparation that I'm doing at the moment is making the list of the stands I want to visit, which halls they're in, trying to work out where they're located, because it's the running time. I have 15 to 20 minutes per video across a day. So I don't have the time to, go from hall 1 to hall 6, then back to hall 1 again. I need to go in, be very efficient about how I'm filming, making sure I get everything, making sure everything's coming, remembering to take a photo for the thumbnail, and then I'm off.
Right.
And I normally stop to grab a sandwich for about 10 minutes, but other than that, I'm filming all day Tuesday. Then I go back to the hotel, I start editing. I normally get the first 7 or 8 videos published by midnight or 1 a.m., get a few hours sleep, and then I go back for 8 o'clock in the morning the following day to do it all again. And then I spend all of Wednesday night, all of Thursday, and most of Friday editing. And then I kind of have a rest. But it also means that people see these coming through and they do binge watch them. I think some of the videos receive over 100,000 views. And for a small channel like mine, which has, I think I'm up to about 13,000 subscribers now. But it's not a lot. And I make a point of I don't really do anything on the channel that I don't like when I watch YouTube. So I don't ask people to subscribe or turn on notifications, or I don't do clickbait, thumbnails, anything. I don't do the 5 things I hate about, insert thing here. So I try and just really give a view of what's going on. And for EICMA, I took the view of there's no point trying to copy what other people are doing, because the established motorcycle media, they have a lot more people, they have a lot more time, they have people in the press room just creating content all day, every day. And what they do is they get the access to the manufacturers and they can publish the real stories about the new bikes and the launches. I don't think there's any point me trying to compete with that.
No.
So what I try to do is just to show what the stands are. So I do maybe a 6 or 7 minute video after the edit of walking around a stand, showing what's there. I don't focus on the detail or the pricing or the top speeds. Someone asked me about that once. How come I don't give the top speeds for every bike on the Honda stand? Honda make a lot of motorcycles because it's not just the bikes. They have every bike in every colorway, every scooter, every trail bike, every trials bike, every Dakar bike, and all the sports bike. I mean, it's crazy how big the Honda stand is. And there just isn't time. So for Honda, for me, is a run round and see if I can, take a look at what's new and then edit that down to a compact 10-minute, this is what Honda are showing at EICMA. Where I seem to have had some more success is the things that the other motorcycle media doesn't cover at all. So things like the brand Cove or Cove, who had a Dakar bike and now they're making a lightweight adventure bike. I have one. But the first time that I found them was at EICMA, and that video was really popular because nobody else was doing it. The same last year. I had asked in my sort of pre-EICMA video if there was anything that anyone wanted me to look at. I published the list of stands I was going to, and I had a few people from India saying, can you go and have a look at Hero? Now, I vaguely remember Hero Honda from visits to India in the past. Wasn't really on my radar at all. And yeah, they do some 125, 160 and 200cc almost dual sport, or they kind of look a little bit like dual sport bikes. But again, very limited market outside India, but I think it was the third or fourth most popular video that I did. I think CF Moto was the most popular with over 100,000 views. And yeah, I think it's those brands that otherwise people don't see. They're maybe a little bit more obscure, but again, it means when people are searching for it, they want to know what's new. That's what shows up in the Google results. That's what feeds the YouTube algorithm. And for me, it's interesting to see some of these brands, and particularly seeing how they develop over the years. Now, I know until probably even 5 or 6 years ago, bikes from China didn't have the best reputation. There were some obscure brands that were based on 1980s and 90s Yamaha engines that weren't well built. They didn't have the dealer support. They would rust in the rain and you couldn't get spares. And they were cheap, but they were pretty much unusable when they broke down. To see the evolution of brands like CF Moto through their partnership with KTM, the bikes they're producing, that they're no longer just copies of KTM's. They have their own design, they have their own sort of visual identity. The quality is certainly rising, and the build quality, the innovation that they have in those bikes is genuinely something new. And they are, I wasn't going to say cheap, they are very reasonably priced. There's things that you would only see on more expensive adventure bikes, things like tubeless wheels are now standard on the CF Moto 450 MT. They're an option on the new Himalayan 450. And these are both bikes for under £7,000. And I think things like that are really going to shake up the industry, but they don't necessarily get that much airtime. There's very few main media channels that are really looking at some of these smaller brands that are up and coming. So for me to focus on that partly is for my own interest and my own enjoyment, but it also finds an audience because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, I scanned through the playlists of the EICMA shows that you've done, and there were so many brands I'd never heard of. It was just, I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, and some of them are just odd things. I'm running between one stand or another. A couple of years ago, there were these odd concept prototype self-balancing scooters with a single handlebar, looked a little bit like a canal boat tiller to steer. And they were like, oh, well, yeah, if you want to do a video, sure, yeah, you can have a go. We'll turn on the self-balancing. And yeah, a very odd experience. But again, nobody else is covering that. Nobody else is making videos about that. There's even some odd things like some of the electrical delivery motorcycles, these odd things that you can bolt on some scaffolding and you can carry a pizza oven on the back and all sorts of crazy things like that, which don't get any other airtime anywhere else. And yeah, maybe they don't have a mass market appeal. Maybe they don't end up in the UK or Europe or anywhere else. But nevertheless, they are interesting to see and to see what's up and coming in the market.
Exactly. I mean, I went to the Cologne show, which is, I think, every 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
I went to it 2 years ago for the first time because it's just up the road from where I live, basically. And my overall impression coming away from it was, all these really interesting looking electric bikes that I'd never heard of and never seen anywhere because you just don't see them around. But in terms of sort of being ahead of where the market is and not setting expectations, but sort of picturing what the future might look like, and these quite impressive looking, very modern bikes, and thinking, yeah, well, if it went for 500 kilometres, that'd be nice, but otherwise it's pretty, sexy looking motorcycle.
I mean, I'm always interested to see what's happening with electric motorcycles, and I have ridden a few. I tried the Harley Davidson Livewire, which I think has now been spun off into the Livewire brand on its own.
Yeah.
I had to go on a Zero, and I do like the way the power just goes and goes and goes, but I just feel there's another step in the battery evolution to come, just to give them that little bit more. I mean, Zero now make an adventure tourer, which is great, but I think loaded up with luggage, 2 up, you might get 120 miles.
Yeah.
And if you're having to plan your trip around stops for a few hours here and there, maybe that works, but you're unlikely to have friends who you can go riding with unless everyone's in the same situation.
Yeah.
And then you'll be fighting over who gets the charger, because if there's 6 of you on electric bikes, how many places will have 6 motorcycle chargers next to each other that you can use?
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see what they're doing. And I think it's trickle down in some cases. You see these very high tech, sort of high end electric motorcycles, and their success, what works or even what doesn't, is going to determine what the designs are for the ones to come. And eventually they will get to the point where they're affordable. I think for the ones that I've looked at where I've actually considered buying them, I mean, where I live in the Peak District National Park is on a 60 mile an hour, 100 kilometre an hour road. So if I've got a bike that won't do that speed, pretty much as soon as I turn out onto the streets, that I'm going to be holding somebody up. And a lot of the ones that are lower powered, I guess the 125, maybe even sort of 250 equivalents, they, on paper, they might say they'll do it, but they struggle. That last 50 to 60 mile an hour bit is slow going, and it won't do it uphill. It won't do it on a 2/3 depleted battery. So I do keep trying them. I do want them to be a success, but I just feel like they're missing an evolutionary step, something in the battery technology that will mean that you can have smaller, lighter batteries or the same size batteries that just last a lot longer. But I'm sure it'll come. Looking at electric bikes now, even compared to where they were 2 or 3 years ago, is a big improvement. And then I think there's things like the Kawasaki had their hybrid Ninja on the show last year, which I think is roughly sort of a 700cc petrol equivalent, which is an electric motor with a 400 or 450 or a 500cc petrol engine, which does what electric bikes are good at. The batteries around town, on a long journey, switch to petrol, which will both recharge the battery and give you that sort of quick recharge, quick fill up capacity for a longer journey. I know that bike has some problems as well, but it's the first time someone's done something like that for the mass market. And again, it's the start of things to come, I'm sure.
Yeah. I was going to ask, on the press day at EICMA, what's sort of the balance? Do you have any sense of the balance between, should we say, traditional mainstream motorcycle press versus independents like yourself?
Now, that's a bit tricky, and I know that at some point you're going to ask me about what YouTube channels I watch, and I'm not very good at that. I don't really watch YouTube. So
I know this already, Andre. I've well researched. I know you're not a big podcast listener and not a big. It's okay.
No, well, this is the second podcast I listen to, and in fact, no, the third, because Clive mentioned another one to me that I try every now and again. I mean, I work from home, so I don't commute. I rarely have time when I'm can actually listen to podcasts. I suppose I could do it on my dog walks each morning, but there's something quite nice to clear your head about just being out in the hills for an hour without any other outside interruption. So I'm not really sure when I have. I mean, when I'm driving, so I don't listen to podcasts or music when I'm riding a motorcycle. But if I'm driving my car somewhere, sometimes I will get through 3 or 4 podcasts. So occasionally on a plane as well. But for the most part, I use YouTube if I get stuck on something, and it's normally trivial things like how to get the back of my car keys to replace the battery, because it's not immediately obvious. And sometimes it is motorcycle things. So with my CRF 300 Rally, I had to get the bodywork off. And I was one of the first people to get one. So fair enough, there wasn't a video showing how to do it, but I thought there must be one for the CRF 250 rally. That's been around for 10 years. They've sold tens, if not hundreds of thousands of them. And I looked on YouTube and I couldn't find one. And I thought, how has nobody done this yet? And sure enough, my video of how to remove the bodywork from a CRF 300 rally did quite well. And yes, there's a certain amount of, working out what you have to undo, where there's the annoying Velcro bit along the bottom of the tank where you feel like you're about to snap the panel. But yeah, if there's nothing out there, then that's something that is worth filming and worth sharing with people.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is, for that kind of thing, it's a great resource. I mean, I also had a keyless fob that I needed to replace a battery with, and I fixed our washing machine based on a YouTube video, which I was very proud of, actually. Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, actually, I fixed a shower. I had a shower that no longer did hot, which was very annoying. And yeah, there's actually a shop that sold the bits that had a troubleshooting thing and then a video showing exactly what to undo, where you didn't actually have to remove pipework, but you could bend it out of the way.
Right.
It's also, sometimes it finds an audience of people that have made the same stupid mistakes that I have. So I have two sets of wheels for my BMW 1250 GS, one with sort of 50-50 knobbly tyres on and the other with road tyres. And one time when I switched them, I forgot to put the spacer into the front wheel, which essentially ground the end off the ABS sensor, which makes all sorts of lights go on the bike. And yeah, it's plugged in somewhere behind the radiator on the right side of the bike. I found a spare one on the internet that I ordered and then thought, you know what, I might as well film this. And I think there must be at least half a dozen, if not more, people who had watched that video because they said, yeah, I did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
People reassemble their wheels, they forget to put the spacer in. You don't notice until, maybe there's a bit of the front wheel's not turning quite as easily as it should. And then by the time you get half a mile from your home, you've taken the end off the sensor. So yeah, it's, nice to provide a service, even if there is a certain amount of public humiliation that goes with it. I mean, I'm no mechanic, as a lot of people who watch my videos will tell me regularly. And sometimes there's things where it's not immediately obvious. So I had because I did the suspension on my CRF 300 Rally, it was standing a little bit tall, so I wanted a longer side stand, and the lovely chaps at Rally Raid, they make one. They provided that to me with some stronger springs and a little handle as a spring puller. But trying to get those springs on that side stand in the end, I did a thing where you clamp the springs in a vise and you push them one way and you put a 5p in on one side, then you push it the other way, put another one in until you've got maybe 10 coins in each one. Then you can easily fit it on and then you just take the coins out with some pliers. I think I had 30, 40 people tell me I was doing it wrong. And then they would kindly tell me how I should have done it right. But I think almost all of them were different. I think there's at least, there's people using lengths of wood, people using ratchet straps, people saying, you could, just basically do it with a screwdriver and flick it on. So I think everyone has their own way to fit springs to side stands. And clearly my way was different to the other 20 and was therefore the wrong way. But it did work. But still, all of those people had better ways to do it, still ended up watching me struggling in my garage. Maybe there's some entertainment for them in that.
So this was a long way of answering that you actually got no idea of the sort of the ratio of real journalists to independents.
Yeah, no, difficult to tell because, the guys from MCN are clearly visible because they have MCN polo shirts on. Everyone else, difficult to tell who's just wearing some branded merch and who is wearing their own branded merch. I think at the press conferences, you can probably tell the people that have the camera crews with the fancy cameras, with lights and boom, mics on booms, with 2 or 3 people together. Some of them, they have a cameraman, they have a sound person, they might have a runner with a script, and they might have the talent, if that's the word, that's actually doing the presenting. But I tend not to see them as much because, I don't really go to the press conferences unless it's something that I'm very specifically interested in. And for me, my focus is mostly adventure bikes, trail bikes, and maybe new and innovative things. I don't know a great deal about sports bikes. I don't really ride them, so it's harder to have an opinion about them. I don't really ride scooters. I always struggle a bit for what to say when I see a row of almost identical 125cc scooters, different wheel sizes maybe. But beyond that, for me, I struggle to share anything that's informed. I also struggle a bit with cruisers. Every time I visit a Harley Davidson stand, there's lots of very shiny things that look like they need a lot of cleaning. But I really struggle to tell the difference between, the large, well-luggaged £20,000 cruiser and the large, well-luggaged £40,000 cruiser, other than the price tag, which probably makes me a heathen. But I'm very apologetic about that. I think there's no point pretending you know about these things when you don't. I still try and show them if I have time and if I can, but I do kind of prefix it with, hey, I can show you what's here. You can get a feel for how the stand is. And some of the stands are quite stylish. They're well lit in the way that things are presented. And I know they have those, I think they call it Battle of the Baggers, these Harley Davidsons that are, race-tuned bikes that are quite interesting to look at, if not terribly accessible for most people.
Yeah. And is there any aggression on the show floor in terms of, people like yourself trying to get decent coverage of the stand and elbows and people pushing out of the way?
Not really, but again, I mostly avoid people wherever I can. So, last year there was a big press launch for the Himalayan 450 on the Royal Enfield stand. I think Royal Enfield tend to get the first slot of the day for some reason nearly every week, and there were a lot of people there. But for me, I'm not going to cover the launch itself, just because everybody else is. So I took that opportunity to go and have a look around all the stands around it, which were completely empty. So I think every other stand in that hall had nobody on it. And then once their press conference was over, I could go and have a look at the bike properly. I could sit on it. I could, do my videos around not just the Himalayan, but everything else on the stand. And I think one of the benefits that I have is that because it is just me, when I get back to the hotel that night, I can get that Royal Enfield video up there on YouTube, and there will be some others that will get there before me, but a lot of the time it's being first, being the first place that people will look, that will then pique people's interest in looking at the other content that I'm doing for the show. And I don't know how the algorithm works, and sometimes I'm really surprised by which videos do well compared to others. But nevertheless, it's being able to get it out there, getting it up there soon, being able to get it out. And I think when I'm in the flow of publishing, I'm probably getting a video up every hour in the evening. So if I get back to the hotel at 7, I'll order some delivery food and I'll just sit there, and every hour another video will go up. Only 6 or 7 minutes long, but it's just that flow. And looking at where people are watching from, people in Australia start watching them the following morning from, me publishing at 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. from Milan. And that just helps to feed the algorithm. People searching for EICMA get my videos suggested, and then that helps to have all the others shown. And there is a big drop-off after the show, but maybe it takes 2 or 3 weeks before it drops down to nearly nothing. And there's always some gaps. So, I live in the UK. We have the Motorcycle Live show, which is much, much smaller than EICMA, but you get some of the brands which don't exhibit at EICMA. So there's a business called Langen that are based up in the northwest of England, who have these interesting two-strokes, which they show. They're not at EICMA, but they are at Motorcycle Live. BMW haven't been at EICMA for a few years, so to be able to go and bring what's new and improved from BMW, I can do there. So I kind of have a second wave that comes from Motorcycle Live, which again feeds views back into the EICMA shows, and then probably by the end of the year, certainly by mid-January, it's all dropped off.
Yeah.
Having said that, the views that I get from that and the growth that the channel gets from that is kind of my big spike, my big boost every year. It is exhausting. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I kid myself that it pays. I think the first year where I did the 21 videos, the YouTube money was maybe a couple of £100, something like that. It's now to the point where it's more than covering its costs, as long as I don't factor in my own time.
Right.
But I'm hoping that maybe this year it will cover its costs and pay me minimum wage. Now there's a dream.
Yeah. Funny you should say that. One thing I wouldn't say obsessed with, but I've been sort of listening to different people talk about is just how much money you can make from YouTube, and this term minimum wage comes up occasionally when people make comparisons with this is what I'm doing, this is what the minimum wage is, and I'm not even making minimum wage.
Yeah, but I think people do it for different reasons. I mean, for me, I don't really want to be a YouTuber. And I don't know if it's obvious from the channel, but quite often there are gaps of 2, 3, 4 months where I'm doing my other work and I just don't have the time to create videos. Also, the videos that I do are things that I'm genuinely interested in. So I don't think about, what would be a popular video and then try and make that.
Yeah.
I will buy a bike myself or do something to one of the bikes that I own. And yes, it does take twice as long to film it and then the same time again to edit it and publish it. But that side of it, I quite enjoy it when I don't have to do it.
Mm.
And the same with the shows. I genuinely enjoy going. I like going to see what's new. I think I absorb a huge amount of information when I'm there. And I also quite, like watching what works and what doesn't when I come back. Mm. And I think all of that together is fun as long as it's fun. But as soon as it stops, I stop. I think if you get to the point where you are trying to make a career out of it, you're trying to make a living from it, I think then it becomes tough, because from what I've seen, the videos they always have a peak just after they've been published, and then that dies off over time. So even if you are making good money from it, as soon as you have a break, if you decide that, I'm tired of sitting in front of a laptop and editing, I'm tired of dreaming up things to show on the channel, I can see how that would become, tough. And it's, there is no pension, there is no sick pay. There's none of the benefits you get from a real job. So I think if it's something that you really enjoy and you have a passion for, then it's probably worth following. But I think to get to the point where you can make a good living from it, that's a lot of work and a lot of commitment over a long period of time. Yeah. And there are easier ways to make money.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of the filming, what are the technical challenges that you have covering EICMA, and how do you compare those with the typical technical challenges you have when you're filming a tour? And I'm talking about things like battery management, storage management, backup strategies for the raw footage, these kind of things.
When I'm at EICMA, I mostly use a single camera, and I have some Rode Go-To remote mics. And for me, I know this is kind of a side thing, but I thought it might make you smile, because I think of it whenever I hear your other guests. For me, almost the sound is more important than the visuals. There's a reason why we have radio and we don't have a device that shows the pictures without the sound, because nobody would watch it. Maybe paintings is as close as we get to that. But nobody watches a TV with the sound off. You lose everything. And I've seen some beautiful, video on YouTube with terrible audio, and you just turn off, it's no interest at all. So filming at a show where it's quite a noisy environment, there's bikes being fired up, there's a lot of people around, getting the audio right is really key. There's no point talking people around a stand if they can't hear you and the audio's not on. Now, on the quieter days, it is easier to get in and to get around the bikes, and I film everything in 4K. I have a Sony ZV-1 vlogging camera, which was okay, didn't quite go wide enough. I've just bought the Mark II, which has a wider lens, so I'm hoping that's going to be a little bit better. Really trying to talk as I walk. So to walk around a stand, in some cases I'm reading as I go, trying to make it sound as natural as possible, as to have the flow really working, because that just helps a lot with the edit. Without that, if it would take me twice as long, if not longer, to edit it, and then it becomes very broken up because I've only got one camera angle. When I'm filming on the bike with two cameras, I can quite easily get away with cutting away to the other one, cutting out a few ums and so's and things where I said things wrong. You don't really have that chance when it's single shot, one camera.
Yeah.
In terms of battery management and things, I always, I carry enough. I have 3 or 4 spares. Every time I stop for a bit of a pause, I make sure I plug them into a battery pack that I have in my bag, and just keep running that way. Big problem with the Sony ZV-1 was when it was on a selfie stick or a tripod, you couldn't open the battery door. So it was always annoying when the battery would go halfway around the stand and you've got to dismantle everything just to get the new one. They've thankfully moved the tripod screw to the other end of the body. So yeah, I think from a battery perspective, it works pretty well. The Rode Go-To mics, they do last all day. The battery life on those is excellent. So I've never really had a problem keeping those charged. The things I forget sometimes is to take the thumbnails, to take a photo in a 16:9 ratio that's got the key bike I want to include, or the key bit about the stand on the right-hand side, so that the YouTube title can go on the left. Sometimes I have a run round on the second day, taking all the photos I forgot to take on the first day. When I'm actually filming and I'm out and about, efficiency is my thing. I'm not one of these people who can just leave the cameras running for fear of missing something. For me, a good day of filming on the bike is a 30 to 60 second piece to camera before I start. And then to have two cameras, well, typically one at the bars looking up, one on my chin with a mic in the helmet, and to have maybe 4 or 5 clips of 30 seconds with narration from within the helmet. Again, a 30 to 60 second piece to camera break in the day, and then again 4 or 5 clips in the afternoon and something at the end. And I know you don't get everything. There will be things that get missed, but what it does mean is that I generally have one battery all day. The new white Enduro batteries in the GoPros,
Yep.
They will last for that, quite happily without risk of running low. And what it also means is that everything in the workflow is quicker. So the time to copy the video off the cameras is quicker. If I've only got 10 clips to sync 2 cameras on, that is a lot quicker than trying to do 20 or 30. And it just means that doing the edit at the end of the day, if I get to the end of the day and I've got more than 20 minutes, 25 minutes of raw footage, I kind of feel like I've failed because I know it's going to be a lot more work to cut that down. And I think YouTube is maybe different to some other formats where you can share video, in that people have short attention spans. Now, I don't really make them for what people are watching, but for me, in the time that I can afford to spend editing a travel video, if I end up with 7 to 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of it's something that I really, really enjoy, then for me that's enough. There may have been other things on the day, and there always are, but some of it's just nice to enjoy the ride. When the way I actually sync them up when I'm riding is I will start the camera on the bars. I will start the one on my chin. I wait for the high-pitched pips from the GoPros, and then I take my glove and I wave my hand between the 2 lenses, and that's what I use for my sync point, because the toot of the horn sometimes isn't picked up well enough to actually do it. And it's just easy. I can sync up the hand in front of each camera, and it just helps with the editing.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of edit that I do from the travel videos than I do for the shows. And again, when I do the sort of the workshop videos working on my bikes, I have a Canon EOS 5D Mark IV on a tripod that I do for the beginning and the end that doesn't move, that just stays there. And then I have a couple of GoPros on tripods that I move around, trying to get different angles. And I think when I have watched how-to videos and they've skipped the important bit, or they've skipped the difficult bit, I get annoyed. So generally I leave everything in. And if there is an awkward bolt to get out, or that when you do it there's a nut that drops down inside underneath the battery box that is then going to take you the rest of the day just to get the stupid chuffing thing back out again, I leave that in. If I have a stuck bolt, trying to replace the rear shock on I've got a Ducati Scrambler 800. It's got an external monoshock on the left-hand side of the bike, 2 bolts visible from the outside. Looks really easy to switch. And I bought an Öhlins shock for it, and I thought, this is going to be a 10-minute job, 20 minutes with filming. It's 2 bolts. How hard can this be? I'll do a video about the setup. And of course, it's a steel bolt into an alloy swing arm that was just absolutely stuck. And I think I spent 2 hours trying to get this thing fixed, and in the end swore at it and gave up, came back the next day. Yeah, in the end, it was a blowtorch getting it really, really hot, and then an impact wrench, and it did finally come loose. And all of that made it into the video. And a few people had, got in touch afterwards and said, yeah, I tried to do that and I gave up. I sent the shock back. I thought, I can't get this off. Someone else took it to their local dealer and asked them to do it, and they ended up rounding off the bolt, which doesn't help anyone. But yeah, no, I think the difference between how I have to record and edit at shows versus traveling versus working in the workshop really does vary. But for all of them, I'm focused on how can this become an efficient edit.
Interesting that workflow rings bells for me, because the way I do these interviews for the podcast, even though I always say to my guest, it's not going to be a live recording and we can stop and whatever, but I do try and structure it in such a way that I don't have to move sections of the discussion round in time, and that it will basically the episode will play out when it's finished in the way that it was recorded, for exactly the same reason. It's sort of an efficiency, and it just makes sense as a way to do it for me.
Yeah, and I must admit, I have listened to I think almost all of your guests over time, and for me, I did actually find that really probably more interesting than watching YouTube, listening to other people talking about what they do, what their workflows are, how they use their cameras. I think one thing which And well, I don't know if you've probably had to endure some of my videos, especially the riding videos. So you might have a view as a sound person as to how the helmet audio sounds. Because I tried a lot of things. And in the end, I found the thing that worked the best is, Sena, SENA, they make Bluetooth kits for helmets.
Yep.
So I'd had one of their Bluetooth kits with a boom mic, but it came with like a little button mic that's supposedly noise cancelling, but it's designed for a helmet. The pickup pattern for it is designed to fit inside the chin piece of a helmet. So I just bought one of those, cut the connector off the end, soldered on a 3.5mm jack, and plugged that into the mic adapter for my GoPro. And they work really well, even in noisy helmets, even with the visor open or with the sort of the bit under your chin. And that seems to work very well, far better than any lav mics. And the mics themselves, they're cheap. I think I bought a pack of 10 for about £70. And I have some Rode lav mics, and I have their standard ones, and I have one of their pro ones. And they're not super expensive, but, they are, I think they were either 70 and £120 respectively. And when I tried them in the helmet, they just don't, the pickup pattern they have just isn't well suited to picking up voice audio for a helmet, whereas the Sena ones, they're Velcro backed, so they're easy to fit.
Yeah.
The wire that's on them is very short but very thin, so it doesn't get moved around a lot in the wind. Having said that, it's not perfect. And the thing I really struggle with is the weight of a GoPro with the mic adapter or the media mod. I've tried various ways to mount them, the chin mounts. I think I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day. Someone was talking about the Dango Designs clip.
Yeah.
I did actually get one for my recent trip to India. I didn't, plan on using it. I thought, well, if I have an opportunity, I'll give it a go. And the helmet that I took had a chin mount from a company called Chin Mounts, and I really should have known better because the chin mount on that particular helmet fell off before. They stick really well, but what they're not good at is hot temperatures. I used it before, and after 6 days in Kerala in 35-degree heat, it's just warming the adhesive. It's the weight of the camera. It's the every bump you go over, and they don't come off instantly. It's very, very sort of micro pulls that slowly pull the adhesive away, and when it goes, the whole thing drops off. And after that trip, I said, I'm not going to use that again. Right. And I guess I forgot, or I liked the helmet that it was fitted to. So sure enough, I took it again this time, and it lasted, I think, until day 13. And then coming down the hill into Manali, I heard the sound of the glue coming off, and luckily I caught it in my hand as it came off. So I did try the Dango Designs one. Again, similar thing, used the same Sena mic on the inside of the clamp. So essentially when it was clipped on, the microphone was directly in front of my mouth. I did quite like it, but it's as a plan B, it was great, and it meant I could film for the last few days. But I found it quite heavy. I could feel the weight on my chin, pulling the helmet forward when it was clipped in place. I found that to get it level was kind of tricky. It's very easy to clip on. It's very hard. Well, it was harder to clip it completely level, whereas with a fixed mount, it does work. It's obviously going to be fitted level, and there you have it. So yeah, I think I'll keep the Dango Designs one as a backup. But for the most part, it's finding helmets that have mounts that can fit really well. Now, there was a company called Wannabes, I think they were called, somewhere out in the States, that had 3D printed brackets, and I have one of those for an LS2 Explorer helmet, and it's brilliant. I love it. It sticks out quite a long way at the front. It's got a very big adhesive patch with some 3M VHB tape on. Works really well. The helmet, however, the internal sun visor broke, and I ended up just taking it out. It is quite noisy. So yeah, I didn't take it on this trip, but perhaps I should. But I think certainly trying to get that helmet audio right, I think the Sena mics on a 3.5mm jack is the way to go. But I am still waiting for the camera that comes out where you can just plug it directly in. I've tried a few others. After the Hero 10 I had fell off in Kerala, I thought, right, time for a change. I'd read a lot about the DJI Action 4. Seemed to be a good alternative. Got one of those, really struggled with the mic. They've got a USB-C jack, and you can get analog to digital converters that plug in. Works fine, I think, for non-motorcycle use. I can plug a lav mic in and it works great. Trying to use it with a helmet mic, it was just either the gain levels weren't right and there's not the flexibility to adjust it. But yeah, just couldn't make it work. And then you've also got the extra connections. With my homemade plug-in connectors, it's just one wire, it's one access point into the camera. when you've got the door open on the side of the Action 4 with a USB-C to 3.5mm adapter and then a mic plugged into that, it's just extra places for dust to get, extra places for the contact to go. I know they do their Bluetooth adapter, their Bluetooth mic, so I have one of those. Great idea. Thought it would work really well. But I just find it's not consistent enough on the pickup time. In fact, the same was true for the plug-in mic. So I would start recording and it would take between 10 and 30 seconds for the external mic to be noticed. So I was, the first day I used it, I was in South Africa. I was riding out of Cape Town, heading down the coast, heading down the garden route. And I found that, I was missing the first, I normally give a bit of a pause, but I was missing the next 10 to 20 seconds. And it's not consistent. It's not always the same. And little things like their beep noise is lower pitched, so I can't hear it at speed. So, I gave up on that. I also tried, I think it's called an Akaso Brave 8. The people at Akaso, they actually sent me one. I get sent very few things. And if I get asked if I would like something, my general answer is no, not really, unless I was really going to use it. But they sent me one. And again, it was at a time when I was trying to find a better solution to keep it stuck to my helmet. And again, same problem as the DJI, the trying to get a good microphone input that was reliable, that I didn't have to worry about whether it would be recording sound or not. So unfortunately, I went back to GoPros. I bought a Hero 12 to see if that was any better last year. Same problem with the weight, especially in the media mode, it's extra weight on the front of the camera, but that seems to be the solution that works best for me for recording in helmet audio.
Do you have any problems with the weight of the Hero 12 with the...
No, it's just me being precious and being, high maintenance and saying, it's not heavy, but I can feel it. I think normally if you put on a motorcycle helmet, they're generally quite well balanced. They're designed that way so your head is upright. And I think I tend to use adventure helmets quite a lot, which tend to have a sticky out chin bar, which means, right. And then I also tend to mount the cameras on brackets which stick out a bit further as well, because you need to tilt them back quite a long way to be able to get the field of vision that has from the top of the fuel tank, the bottom of you have the dash, you have your hands, and you have that full view of the road. So it has to go out quite a long way and then tilt back a long way to bring it into the right sort of field of view.
Because the reason I ask is I have a Hero 9, or I have a couple of Hero 9s, which are, I think, the same size. More or less,
they are. It's the same form
10,
factor.
11, 12s. And I use a chin mount on a Shoei, is it a GT Air 2, I think? Anyway, it's that kind of helmet. And I definitely can feel it. And I think, I've been doing this for half an hour. And it's not the kind of weight that is really going to be a problem, but it's that kind of weight you think, after a while, this could actually cause me a real neck problem.
Yeah, and I think at the end of a day, in particular, it's very present. I mean, it's not been that much of a problem for me. I tend to leave my camera on, not turned on, but I tend to leave it on the helmet all the time. But that's probably just laziness on my part. I'd rather just leave it there than take it off because of the weight.
Yeah. Have you played with the GoPro remotes? The little switches that you can turn the cameras on and off?
I did. But then, again, it was the wake-up time and the delays. And actually, for me, I've got one camera in front of me. It's easy for me to take my left hand off the bars and just push. You get that tactile feedback from the buttons, so it's when it's been pressed. You hear the three pips when it's being turned on. And again, turning off, I'd had a problem, I think, with the Akaso Brave 8 in that I got it the wrong way round. I think I turned it off. I thought I turned it off, but hadn't, which meant that for the next hour, every time I turned it on to do some filming, I was actually turning it off for the interesting bit and then turning it back on for the long periods in between when I wasn't saying anything and nothing to record. And I think GoPro have really got that right. The fact that with gloves on, I can easily feel for where the button is. I get that tactile feedback through the button, plus I hear the pips, and then I think it's 6 pips. I never really count them because they're quite rapid. But for me, it's very easy to hear when I'm turning the cameras on and off. And if you're only trying to record, a few short clips, that's really useful. That really helps with me, helps me to be efficient with how I'm filming.
Yeah. I have one of the remotes, and I thought it would fix all my problems in terms of syncing up the cameras, and I think great, but it's just so unreliable.
Yeah, and even that syncing thing, you'd think it would start them all together, But no, it's it's not ideal.
Anyway, it works sometimes, but I can't really trust it. I always have to look down to see if the camera's on.
And I think that's it. I think if you can't trust your gear, doesn't matter what it is, you then start losing the confidence just to be able to turn it on and film, or to start speaking. Do you suddenly find yourself leaning out the way to try and, check in your mirror to see if you can see if it's running, and then if it isn't, then and I think all of that, some of it's probably dangerous if you start messing around with the camera as you're going. Yeah, I do still struggle a bit with the GoPros, and it's a few annoying things. So the things I loved about the DJI is the magnetic quick release mount.
Oh, yes.
It's really solid. It just slots in on the magnets and it's there.
Yeah.
You don't need that extra housing. The fact you can change the battery without having to take it out of the media mod. The media mod on the GoPro works for me as a mic input. But the fact that you not only have to take the camera out, you actually have to take the camera off the helmet. You have to undo the screw. You have to fold in the little tabs. Then you can open the media mod, and then you can get to the battery. So with the old blue batteries, which didn't really last, I just found that to be very annoying. With the white ones, it's much better. The white endurance batteries, they last much better.
Yeah.
So I rarely have to do that. But yeah, it's those little things that if it's wrong, it just really knocks your confidence in being able to use it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to go back on was you mentioned that you'd had more success with the small, close working mics inside the helmet rather than the lavalier mics. And of course, the whole reason for that is a lavalier mic is designed to sit on your chest.
Yes,
and it's actually,
absolutely.
It's tuned from a response point of view for that specific reason. If you stick one in your close to your mouth, they do not sound as good as when mounted on your chest. And I think I've seen you using the Rode lavaliers in your EICMA videos, and I have to say the sound is pretty good in terms of, I was surprised. I thought there would be a lot more background noise. I thought it would really struggle, but actually it sounds good.
Yeah, no, they work really well. And even though I'm just using the camera on a selfie stick, I actually use wireless mics for that. So it's basically the Rode lav mic plugged into a Rode Go 2 wireless setup. I only tend to use one of the transmitters, then I have a second one as a spare. But yeah, no, they work really well, and I'm really pleased with that as a setup. That would still be my go-to, even over the Bluetooth options that DJI have.
Yeah. And I actually watched the whole Kerala series. I was particularly interested to watch that because I used to work in Singapore, and probably my best friend from Singapore was from Kerala, and he was constantly telling me that, it's just gorgeous, you've got to come here. And the thing that always amused me was Kerala is known as God's own, and New Zealand is also known as God's own.
And so is Yorkshire.
Yes, I've heard that as well, yeah.
A few varieties in there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, that Kerala series, I think, and again, it's something which, I've sort of nodded and smiled when your other guests have mentioned it, is that I think if you really want to do, motorcycle travel videos well, you probably have to travel alone or travel with a very, very patient person. Trying to put together a travel video, especially on a group organized trip, is hard. You don't have the opportunities to go back and reshoot or set up a camera at the side of the road. So for that trip, that was one that, I also wanted to enjoy it. I'd never been to Kerala before. I didn't want to only be, focused on the filming. So what you see in that set of videos is really just a few snippets through the day. It's that exactly what I described before with my piece to camera at the beginning, 3 or 4 clips from the morning, something at the lunch stop, 3 or 4 clips in the afternoon, and then a piece at the end of the day. But hopefully to give enough, to show enough of the sort of diverse terrain, the sort of things we're seeing, the sort of things I can talk about as I'm riding.
Yeah.
Give people a taste of what it's like riding in city traffic or town traffic in India, which, does require a fair amount of concentration. You don't want to be focusing on your cameras and, am I getting the right shot of that cow about to pull out in front of me while a tuk-tuk is doing a U-turn and a young lady with her family is on a scooter coming by on the other side while a truck is trying to overtake us all at speed. But at the same time, trying to give people a bit of a feel for what it's like. It's not the best, but it's it's a compromise. It's enough to give people a flavour of what it is. And I know a few people who have actually gone and done trips in Kerala off the back of that series of videos. I did speak to the guy with the company that that organised the trip. And he said, yeah, he said, but you could have put a bit less traffic in, or, sometimes people do these videos and they show the scariest bits and people think, okay, that looks like out of my depth. But, I'd like to think it was representative of the sort of riding we had to do.
Yeah.
And, for my family, back home, they probably think I'm crazy by going and doing these trips and coming up with ideas about where, who would choose to go and ride motorcycles in India. Not once, but 3 times. And to be able to share with them a little bit about what I've seen. And I suspect it's something we'd talk about at some point. But I actually quite like doing the edit after I've come back, because when you have these multi-day trips to interesting locations, interesting countries, I did a few videos from my trip to Colombia earlier this year. And I love Colombia. I think it's not really known as a motorcycling destination. I think it's had a rough past. Certainly 20, 30 years ago that Colombia wasn't known for its motorcycling, certainly known for some other things. But now it's fairly politically stable. There's people coming from Ecuador and Venezuela to Colombia because it's a safer place to be. And in a fairly short motorcycle ride, I think we did maybe 1,000 kilometers, maybe even less than that. But we did 4,000-meter peaks. We rode over a volcano. We went down canyons. We stopped to feed hummingbirds in the middle of the jungle. So all of these things is a real onslaught to your senses. Every day it's something new. And they're quite full days and they're quite long days. And you don't really, or at least I don't really process it when you're seeing it at that speed, when you're seeing new stuff every day. So to come home from a trip like that, have a week or two to do my laundry and catch up, and to then to start to go through the footage, it's almost like a second go, and it's a much slower way to absorb the information, a slower way to see it. And I know, well, at least for my travel videos, not many people watch them, and I'm kind of fine with that. I make them for me as much as I make them for other people. But to have that opportunity to even to go through the editing process is a nice way for me to see things again, to remind me of things that I saw on the road or that I saw that were probably a fleeting glimpse and maybe I didn't think about again for the rest of the trip. And when you're doing an edit and you are looking at things with a certain amount of scrutiny, you do see things again, and it really helps to cement the memories. I'm going to be 50 this year and I still have most of my memory, I think. But, it does help. And I think when you go to somewhere like Kerala or Colombia or Bolivia, where you have these, amazing vistas, this amazing scenery, and you are focused on staying safe on the motorcycle, having that second time around to relive it is quite comforting and quite useful.
Absolutely. Am I allowed to ask what's been your favorite destination?
Oh, that's hard. I think of all the places I've been, there's always been standout moments. I went to Bolivia in 2017, and the aim I think I had was I wanted to go and ride on the salt flats at a uni, which is hopefully not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but to go and ride on, I think is it something like 12,000 square kilometers, a perfectly flat white salt, where you can ride in any direction at any speed. You have no feeling for how fast you're going, but it was such an amazing experience. But there's so many other things on that trip as well. Seeing flamingos flying high up on the Altiplano. At the same time, this last trip that I've done, going up through the Spiti Valley, and some of the views you get at the top when you really feel like you're in the Himalayas. There are 6,000, 7,000 meter peaks on the horizon. You're riding a 23 horsepower Royal Enfield Himalayan 410. A bike which is. It's a slow bike here. Over there, it's almost the fastest thing on the road. But the fact you can ride a motorcycle to these places and see it is just incredible. Last December, I was lucky enough to go and ride in South Africa, just on my own bit of solo travel. I spent my birthday riding over the Swartberg Mountains, and just to stop and take a look around and take in the views and just how empty the place is was just you pinch yourself almost to think, I'm really lucky to be here. I'm not particularly religious or spiritual, but every now and again, you have a day when you think, wow, that is a day to remember. I did have one day in South Africa where I don't think I saw a single car all day, riding mostly dirt roads in the Karoo. And a friend of mine had let me borrow a 1200 GS Adventure on mostly road tyres, which maybe wasn't the perfect bike or the perfect tyres for gravel roads. And on the first few days, I was just so scared of dropping it or doing myself an injury that I was, pootling along at maybe 15, 20, 30 miles an hour tops. By day 3, I was happily shooting through these landscapes at 60 or 70 miles an hour, and just thinking, wow, this is what it's all about. This is why we have motorcycles. This is the sort of places you can visit. And there's nobody there to share it with. It was just me, no mobile phone signal, just me there with my own thoughts. And yeah, I just loved it.
Mm. Any dream destinations?
Dream destinations that I haven't been to already?
Yeah, of course.
It's hard to tell, because until you get there, you don't really know. I mean, I would like to visit Patagonia. I would like to visit China, actually. It's such a vast country with such a wide variety of landscapes. Again, people don't go riding motorcycles in China. It's
which is a real pity, because you're absolutely right about the variety of. I mean, I was lucky enough to live there for 5.5 years, and
oh wow,
I saw a tiny part of China, but enough to go, wow, this place is just it's immense in the way that when you're in the middle of North America, you feel that you're just sort of at the center of the earth, because you're just so far away from everything else. Yeah. And it gives that same sort of impression when you're in China too. It's, vastness is amazing.
I suppose I should say New Zealand, right, as a dream riding destination.
No, it's all right. It's all right, Andre. You don't need to butter me up. I mean, New Zealand, just everyone goes to the South Island, and I'm from the North Island, and I just do a little bit of the North Island. I mean, we have gorgeous beaches up north.
Oh, you know what? I've been to New Zealand once. I went for 3 weeks, and I only went to the North Island. I didn't go to the South Island at all.
Well, that's kind of a crime as well.
Yeah, but I don't know. I had 3 weeks. Even 3 weeks in the North Island is not a long time.
Yeah.
I had a few days in Auckland. I went down to Rotorua and did to Taupo and did all the touristy things around there. I went skiing for a few days with my friend who I went to visit. And then suddenly that was it. The 3 weeks came and went in the blink of an eye. Yeah, I would like to go back. I didn't ride motorcycles then, in my defence.
Yeah, well, I've never ridden a motorcycle in the South Island, only in the North Island. I've cycled around the South Island, but I haven't motorcycled around the South Island. And that was a long time ago too, I might add.
I've never been to Australia, but I had a couple of guests on my Romania tour earlier this year who organised the BMW safaris, or do the BMW safaris in Australia, and that looked like a huge amount of fun. So, yeah, maybe my first visit to Australia will be to go and ride a motorcycle on one of those. I think there's lots of other destinations which I probably don't know enough about to really, say this is my dream destination. I've never been to Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, that whole area. So I would quite like to go there and do some travel, possibly by motorcycle.
I've done sort of an adventure tour, motorbike tour through northern Thailand and one through Laos, northern Laos. And the Laos one in particular was amazing, because you really, again, great sense of isolation and just amazing landscape and stuff. Yeah, but that was a long time ago as well. Yeah,
and I'm sure those sorts of vistas and scenery are available all over the world in different ways. And it's that moment, when you are there doing a fairly technical activity of riding a motorcycle, but you have that view, I think I mentioned it before, you see the world in a very different way when you're traveling by motorcycle. And I love that. That's what does it for me. So I think anywhere where you can go and you can ride like that. I mean, the other thing that I've done is whenever I've had to travel for my day job, I try and tag on a bit of motorcycling. So I had a conference in Orlando a couple of years ago. Not really my sort of place, if I'm honest, but I went to Miami, rented a Ducati Diavel and rode down to Key West for a night.
Oh, yeah.
Not the most exciting ride, but again, an interesting thing to do, to go down through the Florida Keys and a way to see Florida in a way when there's very little else in Florida that, I'm not really a theme park sort of person. And other than that, I suppose alligators and one of those airboat things would have been kind of fun if I could have fitted that in, but maybe I'll do that next time. And the same, I had a conference in Las Vegas and went out there and rented I was going to rent a KLR 650, but it was just after the new Africa Twin 1000 had been launched and they had one of those. So I said, okay, I'll take that. And quite foolishly set off into the desert with only 5 litres of water. And yeah, I think it was coming up to noon. I think it was 104 and I ran out of water, I just dragged that heavy bike out of another gravel pit where I'd got it stuck. And thankfully I made it back in one piece. Probably had, verging on heat exhaustion, but everything was fine. And I did at least make it to the conference afterwards. But yeah, to be able to, for people that have to travel through work who ride motorcycles to, just add an extra day on here and there, you can do quite a lot. There's a lot of places around the world where it's easy to rent a bike. And yeah, as long as you can get to grips with the traffic wherever you end up, it's a great way to see things that otherwise you'd just be seeing airports and hotel rooms and conference centres.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to ask just a couple of quick questions about YouTube. We've sort of talked a little bit about YouTube, but I wanted to ask, can you remember when you started the channel, and if you compare that with now, do you feel you have sort of the same intentions and ambitions for the channel?
I think, I'm sure it must have changed, but I don't think I ever really had a clear idea of what I was doing. I'd always travelled a lot, both with work and for pleasure. And I always quite fancied having a trail bike. I'd ridden a CRF 250 before and found that it was okay, but it was just a little bit, I just needed a little bit more. I think if Honda ever make a CRF 300, that would be ideal for me. So I was delighted when in September 2020, in the height of COVID, where I was supposed to be going to Morocco and Romania, and both trips had been cancelled, all my conferences were cancelled, I was just stuck at home. And Honda announced they were making a CRF 300, but it was Thailand only. And then I think at the beginning of December, they announced they were going to bring it to Europe. So I pretty much called my dealer right away and ordered one. When that turned up, I think we were still in the first lockdown of 2021. I think that was probably still pre-vaccine days. COVID was still all the rage. I think we'd had a busy Christmas, then everything had shut down again. So when you have very little else to do and you can't go anywhere else, I had a lot more time. I think I had a lot more time to film when I first started, and to be able to have a much higher level of output, just because that's what I would do for a few hours every week. Now I find it much harder. Now I have other travel commitments. I have my tours that I do and that I run. So trying to find the time around that to make motorcycle videos, it doesn't pay enough for me to push other things out, and I have to enjoy it. If I'm not enjoying it, I will go and do something else until I've got an appetite to pick it up again. I would like to do more. The project I'm working on at the moment in my day job is going to finish, I think, probably next summer. And then I did contemplate maybe trying to do YouTube full-time for 2 or 3 months. And by that, I mean, I would do that as my 9 to 5. I'd get up in the morning and make a video, do something in the workshop, go and do a test ride, do something. But I don't think I'd ever want to do it full-time. If I had to do it full-time, it would definitely become a bind, sitting in front of a laptop, doing those edits, having to think up things to do all the time. But I am slightly curious. So what I have seen is that when I can do regular content, when I can do 2 or 3 pieces of content every week, that the channel does grow. If I put a video up every now and again, it doesn't. It's it might get some views, but it doesn't drive the adoption. It doesn't feed the algorithm within YouTube to get other content out there. One of the reasons why I thought I'd have a go was that I think it must have been the summer of 2020, I'd seen a thing in the news where they'd asked a group of 7-year-olds what they wanted to be when they grew up. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but certainly 7-year-olds are very clear, and most of them wanted to be YouTubers or gamers or gaming YouTubers. And far more wanted to do that than wanted to be doctors, engineers, and I think lawyers, or there's another profession combined. So it did make me think, how maybe I'd try to see how hard it is. And I think as I found, it's really hard, just to get that initial traction. I think you either have to be lucky or you have to do a huge amount of work. And then you have to maintain it. You have to keep going. I can't remember how many videos I've done now.
390 as we record. 390.
Wow. Gosh. So this India trip will take me over 400. EICMA will probably take me close to 450. So it's to be able to do that and to do it regularly and to keep enjoying it. Maybe that's the challenge.
Do you perceive any change in the YouTube motorcycling audience, or the YouTube audience who focuses on motorcycling? Do you perceive any change in what they expect, what they want, or is that something that it's very difficult to determine?
It is difficult. I mean, and again, because I don't really watch a lot of YouTube, and I don't really look at what people follow, it's hard to say. I mean, I seem to know more and more people, or come across more and more people who watch YouTube rather than not only like terrestrial television, but even streaming services. They won't watch a Netflix or an Amazon or an Apple TV, but they will watch YouTube. Religiously. Some people I know who subscribe to channels and they will watch every video that comes out on that channel. I don't think I have any or many people like that, but there's a handful of people that comment on nearly everything that I post, and that's quite nice. Quite nice, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I think people are maybe using it more and more as an information source. I find that, if I get more than 50% viewing time on a particular video on average, I think that for me is success. I don't know if other people have videos where everybody watches all of it, start to finish, every minute, every second. But I don't know if that's a change, or maybe it's always been like that. People have short attention spans. I've never really done much with YouTube Shorts. From this last India trip that I did try and take some content in portrait format on my phone, and I think I managed it for the first couple of days, and then to put up a reel that was probably a minute long with music. I've listened with interest to your guests who talk about the challenge of finding the perfect piece of music and how they sync that and the workflows that they have. I've never really done that. I think in the early days I came to my own opinion that music was quite a divisive thing. So if I was watching a video or a film and it was music that meant something to me, I would immediately be engaged. But it is such a personal thing that for every person that's immediately engaged, there's somebody who hates that piece of music and immediately disengages. And I think for most of the content that I do, I normally have something to say, whether that is sharing some knowledge about the place that I'm traveling through, talking about how I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what the place is like, or talking someone through some modifications that I'm doing to a bike, testing a part, or even on test ride. It's people don't just want to see me riding a bike. I think it's much more fun to ride a bike than watch someone else riding. So if the person doesn't have something to say, then I think people would disengage. Maybe if you really do get the music right, that it really helps, and that's what makes it. I just don't have the skill or the knowledge to be able to do that yet. So yeah, I think the shorts does interest me because maybe that's something that I can do day by day on the road. Although I did that, I think, for the first 2 days on the India trip, and then decided that I would rather enjoy the place, enjoy spending time with the people that I was on the trip with. Because even a short, 1 minute clip, 1 minute video that takes in 20 clips, sort of 2 or 3 seconds a piece, trying to cut them all to the beats of the music and the changes in the music, probably would take me an hour to edit and publish. And I decided I had better things to do with an hour in the evening in northern India each day.
I think this is leading nicely into my last question. And, you've listened to the podcast, so you know what it's going to be, and everyone knows what it's going to be. And that is, of course, I have to ask you, does the filmmaking enhance or diminish the pleasure of a motorcycle ride for you?
For me, it probably enhances it, but maybe not at the time. So for me, I think, as I mentioned before, it's the opportunity to relive maybe places that I will only visit once in my life after I've come back, after I have time to digest it and see it and take it in. That I really enjoy. I think the actual mechanics of making a film, taking video while I'm riding, it's just something I do while I'm there. Having said that, I haven't done as much of the solo travel where I can actually focus on the filmmaking, the video making. And maybe that's something I would look to do in the future, to do more solo travel where that is the aim, rather than the aim is to go and ride a motorcycle in an amazing location, and to film some of it to share with people. If I'm actually going there to actually make the film, to actually take that time to massively cut down the distances that I can do, doing what I can see, but in order to get some really good footage, something that I can turn into something that is more than just me wittering on as I ride through yet another location somewhere around the world. I quite often ride without cameras. If I'm going out around the Peak District, if I decide to go out to clear my head on a Sunday, there's a few nice bike cafes nearby, and I'll generally go out without cameras. I don't feel like I always need to be filming. But I think if there is something like a review video, or I'm going to somewhere where I'm only going to go once, then yeah, I think that it does add to it for me. If not at the time, but certainly for the edit to do that reliving after the fact.
Thanks so much for being my guest today, Andre. You've obviously got the YouTube channel and the Instagram account of the same name, Peak Motorcycles. Is there anything else you'd like to promote or tell the listeners about?
I would. On my website, which is Peak Motorcycles, that's Peak, P-E-A-K, motorcycles.com, there are details of 2 events that I run each year. One of them is the Tours to Colombia. So I have 2 one-week tours. They are run at cost. It's not a business that I need to make money from, but it is a place I love riding motorcycles. So if you go and have a look on there, you'll see my videos from this year's trip to give you a flavour of what it's like if you want to come and feed hummingbirds in the jungle in February when the weather is miserable in the Northern Hemisphere at a pretty much cost price. Then please get in touch through there and come and join me next February. If you are in the UK and you don't ride over the winter, but you want something to get you out of bed and on the bike and out and riding, at the end of April, I'll be running a season starter for the second time in the Peak District at the Bike and Boot Hotel, very close to me, just down the road, where we have 2 days of riding, probably 30 to 40 bikers out, enjoying some fine food and this beautiful scenery of the Peak District. I think everyone that came this year had a really good trip, and most of them are booked to come again next year. So yeah, come and join us.
Great. Well, good luck for the upcoming EICMA show. Don't run yourself into the ground. And I believe your next trip to Colombia is in February, so good luck with that as well. Thanks again for joining me today. Take care and ride safe.
Thanks, Simon. It's been a pleasure.